Thank you. The next item of business is portfolio questions. Again, short, sharp questions and succinct answers, and we'll get through everybody. First question on health and sport. Alec Cole-Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the findings of the Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland 2018-19 report.
Cabinet Secretary Ms Freeman.
We are carefully considering the findings of the Commission. These will inform the independent review of mental health legislation we announced earlier this year. This review is chaired by John Scott QC and will in part focus on compulsion, is currently considering how best to seek and evaluate evidence about the way persons subject to compulsion under the Mental Health Act currently receive care and treatment. This includes issues such as compulsion and how its use and application has been developed since the Act came to force. The review will aim to produce an interim report in May 2020, and work will continue with stakeholders to ensure these orders are used correctly and continue to promote patients' rights.
Alec Cole-Hamilton.
I'm very grateful for that reply. The report shows a 122% increase in short-term detentions among women under the age of 25 since 2009. And the number of times people have needed compulsory mental health treatment in Scotland has reached a record high, over 6,000 detentions under the Mental Health Act last year alone. These shocking statistics show people aren't getting help fast enough, and as such their needs are being more acute. What is the Cabinet Secretary doing to reduce mental health waiting times, and when does she expect the last of the 800 key workers in GP surgeries to be deployed?
Cabinet Secretary.
So there are many reasons why there can be a rise in the number of short-term orders. Rates of detention have complex causes, and that is why it is important that we look at the findings of this report, and also that the review undertakes the work as I've outlined. Mr Cole-Hamilton is well aware of the number of actions that we're taking forward in terms of improving mental health waiting times and mental health services, so I shan't rehearse those again. We have already published our information on our progress in terms of the 800 additional mental health workers who will be in place in the lifetime of this Parliament. I'm happy to refresh his memory on that in writing if he wishes.
Monica Lennon, followed by Annie Wells.
Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that the sharp increase in teenagers being subject to forced detention is worrying, and can she advise how many specialist NHS mental health beds are available for children and young people in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
I agree with the member that that is a number that is of concern and needs to be looked at in some detail as to why that might be the case. In terms of the specific question about the numbers, I don't have that with me, but I'm happy to send that to Ms Lennon immediately after this portfolio questions.
Annie Wells, briefly.
Thank you. Significantly, the report highlights that rates of emergency detention vary considerably across Scotland and Greater Glasgow and Clyde, having the highest rate at 84 per 100,000 of the population. When it comes to compulsory treatment orders, Greater Glasgow and Clyde has had a higher rate than Scotland rate for the last 10 years. What action will the Cabinet Secretary take to address the stark differences across the country?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, as the member knows, I'm always concerned about variation in the delivery of our health services and in outcomes across a whole range of issues. And so I do want to understand why there is that variation. That will be part of how we consider the report's recommendations. It will also be part of the work that Mr Scott is undertaking in our review. And as that progress is made, we'll ensure that members are advised.
Question 2, Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what NHS workforce planning is taking place to account for any loss of EU membership and freedom of movement.
Cabinet Secretary.
Of freedom of movement between Scotland and the rest of the EU will have a detrimental impact on our ability to recruit for our health and social care services in the future, and in our ability to retain valuable EU workers in that service. We're actively attempting to mitigate these impacts through our targeted international recruitment efforts and through increased investment in growing our own talent across health and social care. However, the damage to our NHS from losing freedom of movement is tangible, and we must take every effort that we can to stop Brexit and to protect our health service.
Gillian Martin.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and I want to turn to another potential damage. I'd like to ask the Cabinet Secretary what her response is to revelations on Channel 4 Dispatches programme on Monday, where they reported 5 secret meetings between senior UK government civil servants and the US pharmaceutical industry. Was the Scottish Government aware of these meetings, and what are the implications for the NHS in Scotland of a UK-US trade deal, which includes supply deals on our medication?
Cabinet Secretary.
I am sure that many members were as concerned as I was by the reports in the Dispatches programme, and were not in any way reassured by the most recent performance by the UK Health Secretary. I have to say, for the benefit of this chamber, the first I knew about this was indeed that television programme. And indeed, Mr Hancock, in all my term as Cabinet Secretary for Health here in Scotland, has not personally responded to any of the letters that I've sent him. That entire disregard for the value of this Parliament, our devolved administration, gives absolute lie to any claims that we are in a partnership of equals in any respect whatsoever. It is critical to our NHS that we do all we can to keep tight control over the cost of medicines. The recent Audit Scotland report showed the essential role that less expensive generic and biosimilar products play in keeping costs under control. All of that will be put at risk if the UK Government trades away our ability to get the best value prices for our NHS. If the NHS is forced to accept the list prices of US drug companies, the implications for the sustainability of our health service will be immediate and severe. All the more reason why we need to take every opportunity to prevent that happening.
David Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One key aspect of NHS workforce planning post-Brexit is the creation of a new medical school. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my view that there is a strong case to be made for the new school to be located within the Highlands Islands as part of the UHI network?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, every credit to Mr Stewart for being the first to take the opportunity in the chamber to argue for his area. Many have come forward and made cases about what we might do in terms of that government commitment to a new medical school, which I think is needed in any case. We need to increase the numbers of our young people that we are offering that opportunity to. As I've said to him and to others, I am waiting to see what offers and options come forward, including from our existing medical schools who have also stepped forward in terms of what it is possible for them to do. We'll carefully consider all of those propositions, but what we will aim to do is ensure equity of access and maximum opportunity for our young people and others in Scotland to train to be a doctor and then to be employed in our health service in Scotland as such.
Question 3, Anna Sarwar.
The Scottish Government what plans it has to review the eligibility criteria for the HPV vaccine.
Minister Joe Fitzpatrick.
The Scottish Government are advised on vaccination policy by the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, the JCVI. The committee is an independent expert group that considers a full range of available clinical and cost-benefit evidence before putting advice on all aspects of vaccination, including eligibility, to each of the UK's health departments. As with all vaccination programmes, the JCVI keeps its recommendations under review. If at any time the JCVI updates its recommendations around HPV vaccination, the Scottish Government will give this due consideration.
Anna Sarwar.
Up to 100,000 boys aged 14 to 18 will not be able to get a free catch-up vaccine when the new HPV vaccination programme to reduce cancer incidence is rolled out in January. Instead, they may be recommended to buy the dose privately. I am aware of one parent that has paid £800 to vaccinate their 2 16-year-old boys. Will the Government urgently consider extending this programme to all boys so no parent is forced to choose between putting food on the table or paying to protect their child from cancer?
Minister.
I will always look at any advice that comes to me. The member will be aware that I'm very sympathetic to was very sympathetic to the concept of a catch-up programme, but I do have to look at the advice that comes to me from the JCVI. I understand that their advice in this regard was on the basis that the successful 10-year programme of the Girls programme has established good levels of herd protection, which means that there would be limited additional benefits to that gained from a catch-up programme in boys. Clearly, there are sections of boys and young men who would not benefit from that herd protection, such as men who have sex with men, and they are able to seek vaccination. But let me be absolutely clear, if advice comes from JCVI to suggest that a catch-up programme would be the right thing to do, then I'm very sympathetic to that.
Question 4, John Mason.
To ask the Scottish Government what the effectiveness has been of the trialling of placing physiotherapists in the emergency department of the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital.
Cabinet Secretary.
99.8%, my apologies, of patients have benefited from the speciality pathway as a result of this trial at the Queen Elizabeth and were seen within 4 hours during the period January to April 2019. The trial resulted in enhanced discharge, fewer patients admitted and a higher quality of care for those seen, as well as freeing up members of the healthcare team to treat other patients more quickly. This has now been extended to providing 7-day, 52-week cover at Queen Elizabeth, with plans to extend the clinical competencies to further A&Es, and in the NHS Greater and Glasgow and Clyde's winter plan, they will extend this to the Royal Infirmary for the winter period.
John Mason.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. I wonder if she thinks that there's other specialities which could be put into A&E which might help them as well.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Unscheduled Care National Programme works with hospitals to consider how patients can access the most appropriate healthcare professional and get the right care without delay. Many hospitals are already working with multidisciplinary teams that include GPs, paramedics and pharmacists, AHPs and other healthcare workers to support appropriate pathways of care. And that Unscheduled Care National Programme will look very closely at the impact of the trial at the Queen Elizabeth and its extension to see what more can be done to roll this out and replicate it across Scotland.
Question 5, Pauline McNeill.
To ask the Scottish Government what progress it's making on encouraging the uptake of breast cancer screening.
Minister.
To further increasing our work and focus on the importance of breast screening, the Scottish Breast Screening Programme needs to be as effective as possible and needs to adapt in order to keep pace with the increasing population and changes in technology and lifestyles, which is why we have approved a review of the breast screening programme to ensure it continues to support early diagnosis of breast cancer. The review carried out by the National Services Division will look at everything from initiation process, advances in technology and future requirements and ways to increase participation and address health inequalities. A systematic approach to introducing changes in technology such as text or e-reminders and artificial intelligence is needed to so change can be implemented quickly and effectively to benefit women. We know that the earlier a cancer is diagnosed, the easier it is to treat, which is why we launched our £42 million Detect Cancer Early programme in 2012.
Pauline McNeill, please.
1/4 of cases are diagnosed in women aged 75 and over, but women over the age of 70 are not routinely asked to attend mammograms every 3 years. They are expected to self-refer, and I wonder why that is. Since life expectancy is increasing in Scotland, the average age is 81 for women. Could the Minister provide an explanation for that? And as there is currently a review of the breast screening programme underway, will the Minister commit to changing this policy and include invitations to older women as part of the review?
Minister.
I think I've said in my first answer, this is a wide-ranging review and I'll make sure that is one of the things that is looked at.
Question 6, Neil Findlay.
The Scottish Government, what action it is taking in response to reports that some women are having total or full mesh removal recorded on their medical records following surgery at centres of excellence, only to later learn they still have mesh inside their body.
Cabinet Secretary.
As the First Minister has said, it's important that we give further consideration to these reports. This is a serious issue. The proper process requires careful review of selected patient cases. We therefore need to establish which cases require review and also, importantly, identify individuals with the required knowledge, authority, standing and independence to carry that out. Health Board accountable officers discussed this at their meeting last week, and taking account of what I have just said, I have asked NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde to propose by the end of this week a means, scope and timeline for this review to be conducted, with assurance from the Accountable Officers Group and from the CMO that this is the required level of response to determine the basis of these reports. Once I have that information and that assurance, then I will, of course, make sure that the member is advised of that.
Neil Findlay.
I welcome what the Cabinet Secretary has said. These are extremely important issues and very serious allegations that have been made. Before we take another step forward in this, can the Cabinet Secretary ensure that she consults with the women involved? Because what we do not want to replicate is a situation where people who have a vested interest in this issue are the people who are doing the investigating. And would it not be better to ask the General Medical Council to be involved?
Cabinet Secretary.
So at this stage, that's why I made the point. I mean, Mr Finlay's point is well made in terms of being assured that those who review cases are independent. And that's why I made that point in my first answer. So I am very clear that the review of cases needs to be one that has credibility, particularly in the eyes of those women who are making the reports that he referred to. So I'm very happy once I have the proposition from Greater Glasgow and Clyde and the view of the Accountable Officers Group, which of course covers all our health boards, and the view of our Chief Medical Officer. I'm very happy to then also take a view from the women concerned as to whether or not what is proposed appears to them to meet their requirement for independence, and to then take that further based on what all of those views come to me. What I'm keen to do, though, is to make sure that we don't overly delay this matter, because, as Mr Finlay quite rightly says, these are very important assertions that need to be investigated, and we need to get to the truth of the matter in the cases that are concerned.
Question 7, Willie Coffey.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how it supports people with dementia, particularly those under 65, and how all people with dementia and their families can access the care and support they require.
Cabinet Secretary.
Everyone newly diagnosed with dementia at any age is automatically entitled to be offered post-diagnostic support, and we are clear in our expectation that IJB should ensure that this is delivered. A new step of support this year has been our extension of free personal care to all age groups, including those with dementia who are assessed as requiring it. We have backed this with both investment and changes to the necessary legislation to enshrine this right. In addition, our programme for government sets out our plans to consult on and develop a new national dementia strategy, which will include a further focus on the issues and the support needs of people under 65 with this illness.
Willie Coffey.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. From local cases I am helping with, there does seem to be a marked difference in the care experience of those with the early onset of dementia under 65 compared to older people. And in terms of general support for families with a relative who has dementia, can the Cabinet Secretary offer my constituents some reassurance that their care and support needs are paramount and on an equal footing with those living with other progressive or terminal illnesses?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm grateful to the member for that supplementary. That should absolutely be the case in terms of the care and support that is offered. I accept that there are areas where it appears that that is not the case. We are actively looking at that and at what more might be done in the immediate period, but also in the longer term in terms of that additional review which I outlined in my first answer. I am very keen that we make significant progress with that and begin to develop further our dementia services backed by the resources that are required for them.
Question 8, Alistair Allen.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the replacement of St Brendan's Hospital and Care Home on the Isle of Barra.
Cabinet Secretary.
Work is underway between the Health Board, the Council and the Integrated Joint Board to determine the best approach for delivery of the hospital project and the Castle Bay Community Hub. I'm clear that this joint work must ensure that public infrastructure best meets the need of the local population and provides effective and sustainable health and education resource for the future. The feasibility study was recently completed and a decision on the preferred way forward is expected to be taken very soon. With the Health Board and the Council, we remain committed to delivering the St Brendan's re-provision at the earliest opportunity.
Alistair Allen, briefly, please.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary. Next week, the local authority is due to meet to consider the options outlined by the feasibility study into an integrated project. Will she agree with me that if the commitment is to have a new hospital under construction by 2021, and if that is to be met, it is important that the community is kept fully informed and involved as closely as possible during its development?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm grateful to the member for that question. I think we can agree on two important points in relation to this project. First, it is vital that a decision is taken quickly and that the Health Board and the Council take the appropriate steps to implement the recommendation as quickly as possible. And secondly, the local community absolutely need to be fully involved and engaged with the whole process, including the design of any new builds. The Scottish Government remains fully committed to this project, and I expect senior leadership at both the Health Board and the Council to move this project forward and deliver against the agreed timescales we have previously set.
Thank you. That concludes those portfolio questions. We now move on to questions on communities and local government. Question 1, Claire Adamson, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to ensure consistent approach to procurement across all local authorities.
Cabinet Secretary Eileen Campbell.
Thank you. Public procurement in Scotland is governed by our national procurement right legislation, which ensures a consistent approach to how contracts are competed for, whilst recognising that local authorities are independent corporate bodies and, like other public bodies, are largely responsible for their own procurement processes and decisions. The Scottish Government engages with the local government sector through the Public Procurement Group, which sets the strategic direction for public procurement for Scotland.
Claire Adamson.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer. According to the Health and Safety Executive, the waste and resource management industry is the second worst performing industry in the UK in terms of workplace fatalities. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my view that safety scoring must be an important, valued part of the procurement process, and that waste contracts across Scotland must be assessed consistently?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, and I recognise the work that the member does on issues around safety more generally. But we would agree, yes, it is already a requirement of all public procurement exercises that suppliers comply with all health and safety law and declare any breaches. Bidders who have breached health and safety law must demonstrate that they have taken appropriate self-cleansing measures to remedy any breaches or face being excluded from the procurement exercise.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Cabinet Secretary what role they expect procurement plans to have in helping councils balance struggling budgets.
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm not sure what that has to do with procurement. However, I would say that if we did have and had followed the Conservative plans that they put forward, which would take more money out of local authorities, then local authorities would be less, I think £500 million, because if we'd followed their tax plans. What I would say, though, if he does want to come back with any issues around procurement, which I don't think featured within his question.
Well, I did think it was relevant. It is about procurement across all local authorities, and raised the issue of comparing that to financial challenges.
I misheard. I thought he was asking about talking about the budget, but again.
Well, you're not having a discussion about it.
I would reiterate, however, that their tax plans from the Conservatives did want to kind of take further more money out of the budget, but we'll continue to engage on this.
I think we'll just call the whole thing a bit of a guddle there, and we'll have a look at the written report afterwards. I'm not wasting any more time on it. Question 2, Maurice Corrie.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what efforts it has made to deliver the Investing in Communities Fund, particularly with regard to channeling resources for rural communities.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Government launched the new 11.5 per year Investing in Communities Fund in 2019-20, and that fund has been developed to support communities design, develop and deliver solutions that address local priorities and challenges on their own terms. It will support our national performance framework by contributing to achieving many of our national outcomes through targeting investment towards addressing poverty, inequality and rural disadvantage. The fund was advertised widely across community and third sector networks in Scotland, including those supporting rural areas. The fund was highly competitive, attracting over 750 applications from all local authority areas in Scotland, with rural and remote places well represented.
Maurice Corrie.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer. Rural communities can often face distinct challenges, such as more difficult to reach locations and isolation. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary for detail on how the funding grants under this initiative have so far targeted problems of isolation and inequality of opportunity, specifically for those in rural areas across my region of West Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely. Rural disadvantage was specifically included in the fund criteria in line with National Performance Framework, recognising those challenges that the member outlined faced by rural communities, such as migration from rural areas, age, demographic issues, dispersed populations and challenges related to infrastructures. Those were absolutely taken into consideration within that funding.
I have to say, Cabinet Secretary, my signal of make it short was to Mr McGregor on the back benches there, not to yourself. There's a bit of confusion. Mr McGregor, your supplementary.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. Given the fund provides flexibility for those who require resources to make meaningful changes in their communities, can the Cabinet Secretary outline the uptake of the multi-year awards, which can reach £250,000 compared to the 6-month and year-long awards?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yeah, I can. I think there was a recognition that there was a lot of community groups that did require that much more flexibility in the approach to support the work that they do in their communities, and that's often an issue that is raised with me by communities. That's why we took this approach in the way we did, to try and enable communities to have longer term funding. So more than 90% of applications submitted to the fund requested grant awards extending beyond the current financial year 2019-20.
Thank you. Question 3, Daniel Johnson.
The Scottish Government what information it has on how many times masonry falls from housing have been reported in the last year.
Minister Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government does not collect or hold information centrally on masonry falls from housing. Local authorities may be able to assist with this request as part of their responsibility in dealing with substandard housing in their area.
Daniel Johnson.
I thank the Minister for that response. In Edinburgh alone, there were 179 masonry falls in 2018, representing a fourfold increase in just 4 years. I think that underscores the seriousness of this situation and the need to record it, but also the need for an adequate maintenance regime for our built environment. So can I ask the Minister when and how the Scottish Government will respond to the recommendations of the cross-party working group on tenement maintenance?
Minister. I agree with Mr Johnson that the maintenance of common property is an important issue, especially when it becomes a matter of public safety. Homeowners and landlords in tenements need to fully accept their shared responsibilities for the upkeep of their property, ensuring everyone living in tenements can enjoy a quality, safe and sustainable home. The Scottish Government held a debate on the issue in June, as the member is well aware, and I welcome the report of the working group on maintenance of tenement property then. And I've committed to making a substantive response to the final recommendations in the report in the autumn. These are very serious issues that require serious consideration, and we intend to make a response in due course.
Graham Simpson, briefly.
Thank you. Autumn ends on December the 22nd, so can the Minister guarantee that he will give that response before then, and will he commit to giving a response in this chamber?
Minister. Sir, I am not a man who makes guarantees unless I've got something written in blood, but I have committed to making that substantive response in autumn. That will happen. Mr Simpson can be assured of that.
Question 4, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what targets it has set local authorities to deliver accessible housing.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government does not set local targets for accessible housing. Specific requirements are best identified locally, informed by the needs of communities. However, our Fairer Scotland for Disabled People delivery plan includes a commitment to ensure that each local authority sets a realistic target within its local housing strategy for the delivery of wheelchair accessible housing across all tenures and reports annually on progress. Additionally, guidance published in March requires local authorities to have all 10-year wheelchair accessible housing targets in place by the end of this year. Increasing the supply of more wheelchair accessible housing will provide more choice and flexibility for disabled people.
Murdo Fraser.
Can I thank the Minister for that response? He will be aware there is a desperate need for more accessible houses right across the country. Can he give us an update on how many councils have provided new strategic housing investment plans, and is he satisfied that these adequately address the demand for accessible housing?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, as far as I'm aware, all 32 local authorities submitted their strategic housing investment plans last December, January. But let me confirm that in writing to Mr Fraser, because I don't have the detail in front of me at this moment in time. My expectation, presiding officers, I've related in this chamber previously, is for local authorities not only to look at this in terms of their local housing strategies, but also to take cognizance of housing lists in their areas. We are investing heavily in housing in Scotland at this moment in time, and while I've said that we are unwilling to look at the amount of subsidy that we give as a whole, I've made it very clear that we are extremely flexible in terms of subsidy for those local authorities and housing associations that want to deliver wheelchair accessible housing. Can I say to the Chamber that in 2018-19...
Just very briefly, Minister, I'm trying to get other people
96% of our new build homes were of the housing for varying needs standard, and that is extremely important.
Thank you. Kenneth Gibson.
Presiding Officer, can the Minister advise the Chamber how many accessible affordable homes are currently being built in Scotland per 100,000 people compared to England, where Mr Fraser's party is in government?
Minister.
In terms of affordable housing, between 2007 and 2018, the supply of affordable homes per head of population in Scotland has been a third higher than in England. That's 131 homes per 100,000 population in Scotland, compared to 96 in England. And indeed, in the 4 years to 2018, we have delivered 50% more affordable homes per head of population than in England. And when we look at the social rented housing sector in particular, within those 4 years to 2018, we have delivered 5 times more per head of population in Scotland, delivering 84 social homes per 100,000 people, compared to just 13 in England.
I've been a wee bit tolerant there. The question was about accessible housing and not affordable homes. So be warned. Question 5, Dean Lockhart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what support it is giving to business improvement districts.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is supporting Scotland's Town Partnership to develop a new and more expansive model for bids, one which delivers more inclusive and energetic partnerships, improves resources and impact and brings greater sustainable growth to areas all over Scotland. The Scottish Government also provides seed corn funding to emerging bids to enable them to develop their proposals.
Dean Lockhart.
During a recent business summit I hosted in Stirling, real concern was expressed by local business about the impact of increasing business rates, including the large business supplement, which over 400 firms in Stirling have to pay. This is forcing many firms to close or cut back on staffing. Does the Cabinet Secretary recognise the real damage SNP business rates are causing to local high streets and local communities across Scotland?
I think, again, the question was about business improvement districts and the support to business improvement districts. So I remind members supplementaries should really attach themselves to the primary question. It's a kind of useful principle. Cabinet Secretary.
I acknowledge that the member will have taken forward work in Stirling. Happy to hear any of the outcomes from the businesses there. But I would remind the member that the Scottish Government provides the most generous package of non-domestic rates relief anywhere in the UK, worth a record £750 million in 1920 alone. And that includes transitional relief and small business bonus scheme. That small business bonus scheme, which is so critical, so crucial to small businesses that maintain and ensure our high streets remain lively and energetic. Bids support that work. Bids continue to support our towns across the country, and we'll continue to make sure that we provide and support our businesses with the generous package of relief that we currently offer.
Question 6, Tom Mason.
Thank you very much. To ask the Scottish Government what correspondence it has had with Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire councils regarding non-domestic rates Scotland Bill.
Cabinet Secretary.
Aberdeen City Council and Aberdeenshire Council responded to the Scottish Government's public consultation on the implementation of the Barclay Review of non-domestic rates. We are committed to maintaining the consultative and collaborative approach that has been a key feature of our work on the Barclay Review, including the Non-Domestic Rates Scotland Bill. And should either council have specific issues they would like to raise with me or my Cabinet colleagues, I'd be more than happy to speak with them.
And now, Mr Mason, I know your supplementary will be pertinent. Your supplementary, please.
Presiding Officer, I hope so. Presiding Officer, I declare an interest as an Aberdeen City Councillor. 2017 rates revaluation failed to reflect the downturn in the oil and gas industry, and as a result proved devastating, with many businesses in Aberdeen area closing in the past 2 years, including the demolition of perfectly viable office blocks. In addition, Aberdeen City Council, for instance, has had to generate 86...
No, but you're breaching another My Little Golden Rules, which is I'd like to hear a question.
In that case, so will the government take the opportunities provided by the bill and the upcoming budget to ensure a truly fair settlement to our third largest city?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, again, we continue to treat local authorities fairly. If the government had followed this Conservative Party budget proposals, that would have meant less £17 million for services in Aberdeen City. It would have meant £24 million less in Aberdeen Shire for the local authorities. In contrast, we have supported local authorities. We continue to show that there are support through our small business bonus scheme in Aberdeen City, which has 2,300 recipients and 7,300 recipients in Aberdeenshire. That has saved much money for businesses across the local authorities in the North East there, and will continue to support the very critical work that happens across Aberdeen City and Shire, important work that ensures that those local authorities are supported and also the businesses are supported as well.
Maureen Watt, briefly, please.
Can the Cabinet Secretary set out how the non-domestic rates bill builds on the transitional relief received by offices and all but the largest hospitality businesses in Aberdeen City and Shire, ensuring a fair rates deal for all businesses in the North East by moving to the 3-year revaluation, which will mean the rating system can better respond to economic change?
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely, and that's the parcel of why this bill is so critical. That's why my colleague Kate Forbes continues to take that work through the Parliament, and will continue to make sure that we do, as the Barclay Review set out, continue to be consultative, continue to be collaborative with our local authority colleagues and others to ensure that we can move the system forward in a way that works in a more agile way that responds to need for particular areas across the country.
Question 7, Keith Brown.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the negotiations between Stirling Council and the agents of the Park of Care development.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, negotiations between Stirling Council and the developer over the planning obligation are ongoing. Scottish Government have recently agreed to allow until the 31st of January for the obligation to be concluded between the parties.
Keith Brown.
Can I thank the Minister? He'll be aware that it's now been 2 years since permission was granted for the development, subject to a number of conditions. And despite a number of extensions being granted, the developer and Stirling Council have failed to reach agreement on terms to allow the development to proceed. Will he consider the views of my constituents that local people have faced a prolonged period of uncertainty over this development? And if agreement cannot be reached, approval for the development should be withdrawn?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I note Mr Brown's constituents' concerns. However, as this is a live planning application, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on the merits of the case.
Mark Ruskell.
In the Minister's Notice of Intent letter from 2017, he agreed with the reporter's findings that, I quote, "The financial implications of developing the sports facilities have not been the subject of an assessment." Is it now the Minister's view that such an assessment needs to be produced before he can then make a decision?
Minister. Presiding Officer, as members are very well aware, I am extremely restricted in what I can say. There's a special place for me in the Ministerial Code when it comes to live planning applications. As Mr Ruskell has obviously got a copy of the letter of intent with him, I suggest that he looks at the letter of intent because what is in the letter of intent is my judgment in terms of that application.
Question 8, Michelle Ballantyne.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to ensure that families and communities have access to affordable homes.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, this Government is committed to ensuring families and communities across Scotland have access to a safe, warm and affordable home that meets their needs. We have transformed access to affordable housing with a record investment of over £3.3 billion to deliver our 50,000 affordable homes target, including 35,000 homes for social rent by 2021. That's a 94% increase on our previous 5-year investment and the single biggest investment in and delivery of affordable housing since devolution. This government can be very proud of its record in affordable housing, having now delivered more than 87,000 affordable homes since 2007.
Michelle Ballantyne.
I thank the Minister for that answer. What I'm looking for is just a clarification. Shortly after the last election, the Scottish Government changed its terminology to state that it would deliver 50,000 homes, which he's just talked about in his previous answer, by the end of 2021, as opposed to build 50,000 homes, which is still stated on your manifesto pledge online. So could you just clarify what percentage of the 50,000 homes will be new builds as opposed to refurbishments?
Just a wee minute, sorry, just a wee minute, Ms Valentine, sorry, but you keep using the term you. One of these days you're not going to do it. Let's hope before the end of this 5 years. Minister.
Presiding officer, as I've said in this chamber previously, this government will deliver 50,000 affordable homes during the course of this Parliament, 35,000 of those for social rent. That is the biggest affordable housing programme that there has been for decades. I wish that some members in the chamber would celebrate it. I would refer Ms Ballantyne to my answer previously to Mr Gibson. If her colleagues south of the border were doing as well as us, that's something that she should applaud. We here are delivering for the people of Scotland.
James Dornan, very briefly, please.
Thank you. Does the Minister agree with the National Director of the Chartered Institute of Housing Scotland, who said in written evidence to the Local Government and Communities Committee that the end of right to buy and the financial security provided by a Scottish Government target to deliver 50,000 affordable homes, backed by £3.3 billion in funding, has created the opportunity for many local authorities to start building homes again?
Minister.
Presiding officer, Mr Dornan and the Director of the Chartered Institute of Housing Scotland are absolutely right. The ending of right to buy and the financial security provided by a Scottish Government target to deliver 50,000 affordable homes, backed by that record investment, has created the opportunity for many local authorities to start building homes again. Affordable new build completions have increased from 0 in 2005 to 1,280 in 2018.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions of the short pause, and we move on to the next item of business.